In 1859, an item appeared in the Tarboro Southerner, a North Carolina newspaper. For some time, a Free Soil paper called the Free South has been published at Newport, Kentucky, across the river from Cincinnati. On Saturday morning last, a number of citizens met and adopted resolutions that it was incendiary in its character and should be removed to the other side of the river. The assemblage then proceeded to the obnoxious office. The Free South was published by William S. Bailey, a northern mechanic who had moved to Newport, started contributing articles to a struggling abolitionist paper, and then been persuaded by the owner to buy it. A sample passage from one of his editorials read, "Working men of Kentucky, think of yourselves. See you not that the system of slavery enslaves all who labor for an honest living? You, white men, are the best slave property of the South, and it is your own votes that make you so." Historian Clement Eaton wrote in his book Freedom of Thought in the Old South that Bailey would have starved had he not received support from the abolitionists of the North. Although the Free South seems to have had very few readers, after the John Brown raid on the arsenal at Harpers Ferry, the locals seem to have decided that any number of readers was too many. The mob gathered at the printing office and demanded to be let in, promising not to hurt Bailey or his family, but he refused, while offering to open his editorial columns to any opinions contrary to his own. Then, according to the Tarboro Southerner, a number of persons then seized a ladder lying upon the pavement and attempted to place it against a window in the second story, but a painter who was at work there appeared at the window and threatened to hurl a hatchet at this first who would attempt to ascend. A young man named Barry Taylor immediately produced a revolver, but it was wrested from his grasp by one of the bystanders. A heavy plank was then procured by the assailants and used as a battering ram against the door, which was burst open by one ponderous blow. Upon attempting to enter the premises, however, Miss Eleanor, daughter of Mr. Bailey, appeared at a third-story window armed with a brickbat and threatened to throw it at whoever approached. Now commenced a ridiculous scene between the assailants and Miss Eleanor, who showed her determination to execute her threat. They withdrew to a safe distance from the range of her missiles, while she stood firm and ready to hurl them. One man, more brave than the others, made a race for the door, but barely escaped the inevitable brickbat. Others followed and by feints and dodges succeeded in keeping their heads whole and followed the predecessor into the building. Soon after the crowd gained interest to the office, they proceeded to take the press to pieces and carry the type into the street, but a number of half-grown boys commenced an indiscriminate destruction of every article they could find. Type were scattered, cases and furniture were thrown from the windows upon the sidewalk, and portions of the press, by this time detached, were hurled down the stairs and broken. A wagon was loaded with fragments of the press and other articles belonging to the composing room and conveyed to Dodsworth Coal Yard on the corner of Front and Lawrence Streets. Another load was deposited on the ferry wharf boat, and a third was thrown into the river. The Cincinnati Daily Gazette reported that members of the mob then warned Bailey that if he tried to resume publication, they'd destroy his entire office. It then added this commentary: "We have not been among the readers of the Free South, but from what information we can obtain as to its general character, it has been anything but a credit to the anti-slavery cause, either in its tone, which was of the ultra-abolition type, or the manner of its support, which appeared to be mostly by donations from parties east, who were apparently misled into supposing that it was performing a great and necessary work in disseminating free soil opinions in a slave state. We doubt whether it had 300 bona fide subscribers, all told, and perhaps not 50 persons in Kentucky were in the habit of reading it. What little influence it may have exerted was undoubtedly prejudicial to the cause which it professed to advocate. But do these facts afford the shadow of justification for these violent and unlawful proceedings? We think any candid and discriminating man will answer not. If Mr. Bailey violated any law, he could have been reached by the law. But it is not at all probable he did this. He simply published a sheet, the general character of which was doubtless as unpalatable to Republicans as those who took this step. If this is not a clear violation of a sacred principle involving the liberty of the press, we confess our inability, as the case now stands before us, to understand the meaning of the term. If the peculiar institution can't stand the legitimate liberty of the press, then they may as well set it down as a foregone conclusion that the peculiar institution must give way. Apparently, Bailey did violate a Kentucky law. 4 years later, as the Civil War was raging on, the New York Times reported that Bailey was in New York trying to procure a press and other necessary material. He has just been released from an old indictment for felony in publishing an anti-slavery newspaper in Kentucky and is now free to devote himself to his work. His boldness and persistency in advocating the doctrines of free soil in bygone years deserve recognition now, and, as he will be for some time in this city, those who would assist him may address him through the post office. Clement Eaton's book is littered with similar stories. However, as he pointed out, in passing judgment on the South for its hostility toward anti-slavery editors, Northern mobs, such as the Ohio one that wrecked abolitionist publisher James G. Birney's press, should not be omitted from the picture. No crime against the press was ever committed in the land of Dixie comparable to the murder of abolitionist editor Elijah Lovejoy by an Illinois mob. Ironically, Lovejoy, who had founded the St. Louis Observer, had moved to Illinois after facing threats and violent attacks in the slave state of Missouri. When John Brown learned about Lovejoy's murder in 1837, he said, "Here, before God, in the presence of these witnesses, from this time, I consecrate my life to the destruction of slavery." There's something to make everyone uncomfortable in this story, whether you're more sympathetic to the North or the South. Share your thoughts in the comments and let me know if you've got an idea for a future video. As always, I've got a companion post at my website, so click the link in the description below. And help this little channel grow by smashing that like button, sharing with anyone who might be interested, and subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.